Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something deeply human. It's incredibly common, but honestly, nobody really talks about it. We're looking at the psychology of crying in private, why some people absolutely refuse to let a single tear fall unless they are completely 100% alone. Okay, let's just get right into it, because the source material we're looking at today reveals a ton about emotional protection, vulnerability, and those hidden heavy burdens so many people are walking around with every single day. Why do the strongest people you know only cry when no one is watching? I really want to let the weight of that question settle for a second, right? Whether you are someone who strictly cries in private, or you may be thinking about a loved one who literally never seems to shed a tear, the psychological research tells us something absolutely vital. They choose privacy because they've learned they have to handle their emotions totally on their own. It is definitely not because they don't feel deeply. And it's for sure not because they're always strong. It's simply because they do not feel safe showing their pain to anyone else.
Which brings us to Section 1, the strong friend persona. Think of this kind of like an iceberg. We're starting with the visible, above the surface reality, what the whole world sees. People who cry in private usually look totally fine on the outside. They're smiling, they're laughing, they're relentlessly positive. They are always the ones showing up and listening to everybody else's problems. But man, right below the surface is a much heavier reality, what they actually feel. Deep down, they can feel incredibly lonely and unseen, literally even in a crowded room. They're physically there, but emotionally, totally guarded. They keep everything bottled up because they're terrified of burdening anyone or being labeled as dramatic. So they just become completely exhausted from constantly minimizing their own feelings.
And this brings up a wild psychological paradox. There is a massive, glaring gap between how they treat others versus how they treat themselves. Think about it. They check in on people. They notice the second someone seems off. They remember all the little details and listen so gently, specifically because they know exactly how painful it is when no one notices them. They know how heavy emotions can be, so they're the last ones to judge. But, turn that mirror inward, and how do they treat themselves? Well, they minimize their own emotions. They just stay quiet. They actively convince themselves that their pain really isn't a big deal or it isn't serious enough to talk about. They compare their struggles to everyone else's and decide, you know what, I should just deal with this myself.
Section 2. The hidden emotional weight. Let's go a little deeper below the surface here.
Imagine being trapped in an overthinking mind. It sounds like this. Did I say something wrong? Wait, am I just being dramatic? Are my struggles even serious enough to bring up? What if they just give me advice I didn't even ask for? Their minds never really turn off. They're highly emotional, deeply feeling people. Just tiny, careless words can hurt them, and everyday moments will just loop in their heads for days. But instead of reacting right then and there, they just smile and stay calm. They replay these conversations on a loop, overthinking things that most people forget in 5 minutes, just holding it all in until the weight is literally too heavy to carry.
So we get to what the source calls the comfort zone of isolation. This is when crying completely alone actually feels way safer than being vulnerable with another person. And to be clear, this is not a lack of feeling at all. It's a survival tactic. It's a vital protective mechanism. They don't want to explain their feelings. They absolutely do not want to risk being told they're overreacting, and they definitely don't want unsolicited advice to just cheer up. Privacy literally becomes the only place where they can be entirely honest. It's that one single moment where they can finally stop pretending to be okay.
Moving on to Section 3, roots of the quiet pain. Like, where does this even start? Why does someone build up this emotional armor in the first place?
Well, let's walk through this timeline together, because psychology shows us that this habit usually starts really early on. Step 1, they likely grew up in environments where their feelings were just ignored or worse, judged. Step 2, maybe they were literally told to stop crying or made to feel weak just for being sensitive. Step 3, over time, this teaches a kid a devastating lesson, that opening up only leads to disappointment. They genuinely start believing it is way safer to suffer in silence than to risk being rejected again. Which brings us right to Step 4, the lifelong adult habit of hiding their emotions. But here is the real heartbreak for the private crier. The old habit stays, even when the people around them are kinder. This protective shield follows them straight into adulthood. They could be surrounded by the safest, most loving, incredibly kind people right now, but that deeply ingrained fear from childhood still holds them back. They crave connection, but they are terrified of disappointment. They desperately want you to understand them, but they literally just don't know how to explain what they're feeling.
Which leads us to Section 4, when tears finally fall, the breaking point.
It is never just one thing. When someone who always hides their emotions finally breaks down, it is almost never an overreaction to whatever just happened right in front of them.
If we actually break down what those tears are made of, the reality is kind of staggering. The source estimates it's something like 40% words they never said, 35% all the times they chose to be strong instead of honest, and 25% just years of pent-up, held-in emotion. So when they finally let go, everything comes flooding out at once. It's a massive, overwhelming release. In fact, our sources point out that sometimes they even surprise themselves with just how much they've been carrying around. The tears don't stop easily because remember, they aren't crying over one bad afternoon. They are releasing years of tightly guarded pain.
Finally, Section 5, Finding Safe Spaces to Heal. How do we move forward?
Look, if you are someone who only ever cries in private, I really want you to hear this. You are not weak, you are not broken, you are human. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You just feel deeply in a world that honestly doesn't always make a lot of room for big emotions. That kind of profound, quiet strength, it deserves to be seen and understood.
Now, healing is going to look different for everybody. You do not have to rush yourself. You don't have to open up to everyone tomorrow. It's a process, right? But the goal, the hope here, is that one day you might find just one single person who makes you feel safe enough to share. And when that finally happens, you're going to realize you never actually had to carry the weight of the entire world all by yourself.
So, I want to end this explainer with a final thought to leave you with. Who will you allow to see your quiet strength? For my private criers out there, I challenge you to really think about who that one safe person could be. And for everyone else watching, I challenge you to step up and become that safe space for the strong friends in your own life. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this one today, guys, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.